This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with global stock markets, and they continue to slide in reaction to U.S. President Donald Trump's worldwide tariff plan. Exchanges in Asia and Europe down again after yesterday's turbulent day, and North American markets opened just minutes ago. The CBC's business reporter Scott Peterson following all of this and joins us now. So, Scott, more bad news. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, we're seeing another meltdown. The Dow opened up 950 points to the downside. We've got NASDAQ down 2.5%. So, and this follows the worst market performance just yesterday, where we saw $2.5 trillion in market value wiped out. So these are seismic moves. This is not just a one-off. And what it's reacting to is there's a lot of fear out there now. The fear index, the VIX index, is at highs that we haven't seen in the last year. And JP Morgan now is saying that there's a 60% chance that the global economy could go into a recession as a result of this. And they're also saying, they're phrasing it like this. They're saying that this is the biggest tax increase that the U.S. has imposed since 1968 and the Vietnam War. So these are big times. Also, we're looking at Bloomberg did an overall survey of $3 trillion of U.S. imports will now have an average tariff rate of about 23%. And that's before the retaliation that we're seeing from China. So this is going to be passed on to consumers. It's the anticipation that the markets are saying is this is going to lead to a recession.
Already, though, we're seeing in this country some bad news in terms of the latest job numbers.
We are. 33,000 jobs were lost in the month of March. That is the biggest monthly loss that we've seen in the last 3 years. So clearly the indication here is businesses do not like uncertainty. They have to make investments. So we're starting to see a pullback perhaps from employment into the U.S., and we're seeing that big job loss for the month of March. Our unemployment rate also ticked up to 6.7%. So lots of worries about that increasing even more. Just even as the threat of these tariffs shake market confidence.
CBC business reporter Scott Peterson. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, John.
Part of the reason for that loss in market confidence is because China is unleashing a new slew of tariffs and restrictions against U.S. goods. Retaliation for the tariffs imposed by Trump on Wednesday. Beijing says it will impose additional tariffs of 34% on all American goods starting next week. It's also putting new controls on some rare earth exports to the United States. Here at home, Liberal leader Mark Carney says it is essential to protect CBC Radio-Canada at this time.
Canada's identity and institutions are under attack by foreign interference. And instead of defending them, Pierre Poilievre is following President Trump's lead and taking aim at our institutions like CBC Radio-Canada.
Carney says if he's elected, he will give the public broadcaster an immediate $150 million funding boost. He will ensure long-term stable funding by enshrining it in law. Carney also says a Liberal government will develop a new governance plan for CBC Radio-Canada to improve accountability and to streamline processes. Carney and the other main leaders are all campaigning in Quebec this morning after being interviewed in French on a special Radio-Canada program. Kate McKenna was up late watching it, and she joins us from our parliamentary bureau. So, Kate, tariffs and the U.S. president have loomed large over this campaign so far. How do they factor into the interviews last night?
U.S. President Donald Trump and his threats against Canada emerged as the biggest issue. Liberal leader Mark Carney says he can't rule out the possibility of a recession, in part because of the effects Trump's tariffs will have on the U.S. economy. But he said he's already had some success with the president. After the two leaders spoke, Trump stopped making reference to Canada being the 51st state, and they agreed to negotiate a new economic and security relationship after the election. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was asked why he hasn't spoken as much on Trump, and he gave a strong response, saying he won't apologize for focusing on the cost of living and people who are having trouble making ends meet. He reiterated his plan to get more energy projects built to make Canada's economy strong and less reliant on the United States. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet said the Liberal and Conservative parties do not have their bases in Quebec, and he called for a Quebec representative to be included in the negotiating team with the United States. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said the focus must be on protecting Canadian workers who have lost their job or are at risk of losing their job. And Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau pitched his idea of creating national stocks of Canadian resources like aluminum and steel that could be used to build prefabricated housing.
Now, Kate, there have been some questions about Mark Carney's French. Last night, a big test. How did he do?
Well, he was asked to give himself a grade for his French, and he said 6 out of 10, but said if he's elected, he'll keep working on it. He stumbled in French at times, using English words occasionally, but he was able to get his message across. He may have a harder time in the French language debate later in the campaign, where opponents are likely to take a more aggressive approach.
Kate McKenna in Ottawa. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Representatives from more than 200 Canadian companies are in Germany, hoping to forge new relationships with European partners. This week, Germany is hosting one of the world's largest industrial trade fairs. And it comes as Mark Carney, speaking in his Prime Minister capacity, says Donald Trump has irreparably damaged Canada's economic relationship with the U.S. Briar Stewart reports.
At a sprawling trade fair in Hanover, Germany, technology and innovation are front and center. But the talk of tariffs hangs over it all.
Well, I don't think we'll ever replace our economic relationship with the United States, but the problems over the last couple of months really showed the urgency, but also the opportunity to find new markets.
That's Jason Myers, the CEO of NGen, a Canadian nonprofit focused on growing the advanced manufacturing industry. He's part of a group of 1,600 Canadians in Hanover, where Canada is in the spotlight as the partner nation for the trade fair. It comes as the EU is looking to shore up its ties to new markets after the U.S. introduced a 20% across-the-board tariff on its products.
Maybe ending in a disaster for the U.S. economy and then also for the world economy.
Hartmut Raun is the Deputy Executive Director of Germany's Mechanical Engineering Industry Association.
Canada and Europe could develop a good partnership. We were quite happy that there was a strong increase by more and more exhibitors from Canada.
One of those business people is Brad Sparkman. His company uses robots to apply paint, and more than half of his business has been the U.S. automotive industry.
I get a little emotional. It's been absolutely overwhelming to see the response and the reception we're getting as Canadian companies by the European markets.
And the businesses hope those warm conversations will translate into actual trade. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Hanover, Germany.
British police are charging Russell Brand with rape. An investigation into the 50-year-old comedian was launched after complaints from several women. Brand is also facing charges of indecent assault and sexual assault. The alleged offensive took place between 1999 and 2005. Brand is expected to appear in court next month. Finally, South Korea's Constitutional Court has upheld the president's impeachment. The Chief Justice says Yoon Suk-yeol violated his duty by imposing martial law last December. The move plunged South Korea into political chaos. As the CBC's Murray Brewster reports from South Korea, there's fear the court ruling will deepen the political divide in one of the region's more vibrant democracies.
Today is a very, very important and good day for Korean democracy.
Sihung Mayor Lim Byun-tak speaking through a translator, a member of the Democratic Party of Korea. He's happy to see the country's conservative president ousted by the top court. Now, former President Yoon Suk-yeol's short-lived imposition of martial law last December was deemed a violation of the rights of the people by South Korea's Constitutional Court. It was a case watched closely throughout the region and the globe because of fears Yoon was trying to ram through a hardline agenda. Lim Byun-tak says he thinks there's now consensus in this country to limit presidential power.
I believe that although we have experienced political turmoil, Korea has been able to quickly overcome the current hardship.
Across South Korea, thousands of police were bracing for possible violence after the court ruling among pro- and anti-impeachment protesters. It's been noisy, but peaceful. Former Canadian diplomat James Trottier says Canada, with its strategic partnership with Korea, should be breathing a sigh of relief that things are no longer in limbo.
South Korea's political chaos had basically left a major global economy and a key U.S. and Western ally rudderless at a very fraught moment.
Elections for a new president in this country are expected in early June. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Incheon, South Korea.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.